Welcome back to Junkerworth Jr. Got to work on my favorite truck, the square body. It's time for some updates, believe it or not. So one thing that this truck has always done that has absolutely drove me crazy, when I built it, I went with the Holley Sniper EFI throttle body. And the idle air control circuit is extremely loud, and I did a video a long time ago of how to reduce your idle air parked position so that it made it much better, but it's still really loud on cold starts, or if you have the AC on, it pulls it out further to bring the idle up a little bit, and it's just really obnoxious. So I'll put a little video clip in here. And that scream just drives me crazy. So it's time for some made in USA throttle body. There's only one place to get it: Motion Raceworks 92mm Icon throttle body. So I did cheat a little bit. I already opened this thing up and figured out that the stud is going to go right down here in the bottom, because remember, one of the dumb things about this truck is I'm running a 700 R4, and I know that's not something that people do, but I already had it. It was built. It works perfect behind this truck. You just have to have a provision for your TV cable. So as luck would have it, one thing actually went my way. Motion puts two holes in here for the cable barrel to hook in, and that one worked out perfect for the center line, the distance from the center of the throttle shaft, so that it pulls at the correct ratio. Really lucky on that. Pure luck, because it was not designed for a 700 R4, I promise. So we can switch our IAC over to this, and the TPS, normal GM stuff, bolts right in. And I screwed a number 6 fitting in the throttle body so that I can hook the PCV system to this, because currently it's hooked up to full manifold vacuum like it would be on a traditional small block Chevy style setup. But now we can hook it up in there, and it'll be on the front side of the throttle body, so it's not sucking quite as hard, and then the air oil separator doesn't have to work so hard over there neither. So we got their 36-inch throttle cable. I'm hoping that's enough. It should be, because it reaches all the way across the supercharger, and this is actually the factory one that I still have on the truck. So we're going to pull that off, put theirs on, then it hooks up to the throttle body nice, and everything should be tidy there. So that leads us to this device that I built here a long time ago when I built this truck. I just had some flat bar steel laying around and a couple of washers, so I kind of went to town making this little bracket. Is it pretty? Heck no. Does it work? Absolutely. It's got 50-some thousand miles on it now, so it's been good, but it's ugly. We can't put that on that nice of a throttle body. Well, then we have a 4-inch coupler in tube here holding our air filter. Well, the throttle body doesn't have that. Well, if you're familiar with Motion throttle bodies, the Icon throttle body as they call it, you can get different connections to go on the front. So this one goes on here, and it's just a barb, so I can slip that coupler right on here. They also have them for V-band flanges, quick release, so you can do a lot of different stuff with their throttle bodies. You could build your own thing if you wanted to. Who knows? It's endless possibilities with this throttle body. They advertise it as the last throttle body that you'll ever need. So I really do think so. We don't need a 102 on this truck because it's a daily driver, so it would be a little too, just be giving it a lot of air when you crack the throttle. It wouldn't be as smooth as a daily driver. So 92 is perfect for me. That's what's been on here. Works fine. Another thing that I cheated on, Motion sells this bracket. So this bracket, try to twist this stuff around here so you guys can see, was designed to go underneath on the back side of the cam on those two bolts that mount the throttle body, and then your cable comes in the top, and it has this nice adjuster. Well, I need a piece to hold the cable for the transmission, the TV cable. So I added this little leg of aluminum on it here, drilled the two holes, and I got another one of these L brackets, if you will, from Motion as a spare, so I could bolt it on here. So now our low-car TV cable should go in here, and the cable itself has a decent bit of adjustment on it, so we should be able to get that dialed in. So really looking forward to this, because Motion told me multiple times that that's, one of their deals is their idle air circuit is quiet. It doesn't scream like the Holley one, and it has a much bigger hole on the front and the back side, a really big open channel. I know it's kind of hard to see, where this one I actually did take it off and do some port work on it on that circuit, just trying to smooth the edges to get smoother airflow through it so it wouldn't scream so bad. It's just one of those things that works great, runs and drives fine, just drives me crazy. So you know, that's one thing that I want to do. Now, things that need to be done, you know the deal. What can go wrong does go wrong. The other day, on the way home before I parked the truck for this project, the alternator goes out on the truck. So get a new alternator on the way from John at PowerMaster. Got that bolted on, fired it up to move the truck again out of the way, and the alternator was really hot because the batteries were dead. So it was having to work a lot. And I've got 2 batteries in this truck, so it's really having to put out some juice to try to bring those 2 batteries back up to life after I jump started. So I didn't want to run it no more than I have to because it was getting so hot trying to bring the batteries back. So I got them disconnected, hooked those up to chargers, and John at PowerMaster tells me, well, you know, Junior, the reason you might have cooked that last alternator and it quit working is if you have a dead cell in one of the batteries. So I'm like, yeah, makes sense, because then the alternator is going to have to work, you know, double overtime to try to keep the batteries up. So he might be onto something there. But I wanted to put chargers on the batteries, go ahead, bring them up, see if they'll, you know, maintain, you know, 12.5 to 12 volts. And if so, then we know we've got 2 good batteries, and I can also put a load test on them when they have a full charge and see if one of them's weak or not, and they do need to be replaced. So that's what we're going to work on there. Hopefully we don't need to buy 1 or 2 new batteries. That'd be a big expense that I just don't really want to deal with right now. Another problem, this is something that I have to do. So I don't think it has currently, got some leaves down here and stuff, but anywho, when I had the truck parked over there, it sat there for a couple of days, you know, while I'm trying to get all my ducks in a row on this project, and there was a nice puddle of antifreeze underneath it. So I thought, wow, that's nice. Really not what I wanted to do is deal with a coolant leak, but I knew that that day was coming. For a while now, this radiator has, I don't know if you can see all those little white specks. It's had some very small leak, and it's not so much of a leak, it's more of a seep, if you ask me, in my opinion. And it just occasionally I'd have to top off the coolant tank over on the other side, and it was always fine. The truck didn't overheat or anything. It just had some small seepage going on, and I think most of it happened while you're going down the road because the little specks would blow over and get on everything, and it just makes it look nasty, and it drives me crazy, and eventually it's going to fail. Well, guess what? When I moved it the other day, there's a nice little puddle underneath it where it decided to go ahead and leak quite a bit more. So time for a new radiator, because this truck is going to LS Fest in September. And I know I said I was going to do that last year, go to Texas, but we didn't make it because my wife got in an accident, so you have to let me slide on that one. But we are registered to go to LS Fest, Bowling Green, Kentucky in September. So I want to make sure this thing's 100% ready to roll and not have a stupid radiator leak on the side of the road, overheat the engine or anything like that. So I've got a new radiator. This one is 31 inches wide and 19 inches tall. The factory radiators in these trucks would have been 20 to 21 inches tall. I can't find, you know, there's always little variations in them. They're not an exact science. So we've got, you know, this air coming through this gap when you're going down the road, that with the new radiator that's 21 inches tall is going to be forced through it. And I'll have to redo some bracketry, maybe even find the factory brackets to bolt on the top of the core support here and hook over the tank. So we'll have a little bigger radiator in it. It's going to be 2 inches taller, and it's going to be 3 inches wider. Now, normally I'm not one to bash a company, but this radiator, when it started having that seep a while back, I actually called the manufacturer of it, and they wouldn't do anything for me because I welded the AN hoses, or excuse me, AN bungs on it over here, because I really like just the clean look of AN hoses. But because I welded on it, the warranty is voided. Well, okay, but I welded on this end, and the leak's happening 31 inches down this way. So there's no grace period or anything on warranty when, you know, I'm the guy that's working in the speed shop selling their parts. Just didn't make sense. So once again, not one to bash a company, but if you're thinking about getting a radiator, I don't recommend you getting the one that starts with a G and ends with a riffin, because customer service not the greatest. Now, I'm not asking for a free radiator, just work with me a little bit, you know, that's all I ask. So time to move on from that. We got a cold case radiator. I'll get that out of the box and show it to you. But for now, let's dive into this throttle body and see if we can get this thing set up. I almost forgot another big advantage to going with the motion throttle cable instead of the factory diesel one. When I rigged this up before, I just put carburetor linkage on here so that I had the correct pull location for this, because this throttle body didn't work out as well as that one as far as the measurement. So did that, and this cable just has an eyelet on it, so I ran a bolt through there with some washers and it's worked fine. But now with the motion cable, I can wrap it around the cam like it's supposed to be, so it'll be a little more progressive throttle. So that's going to give us a lot smoother takeoff as well, because it's going to open it a lot easier. The way that cam is like offset, if you will, it's going to be like a little bit of throttle body action here, and then as it comes around the ramp, it opens up quicker. So it's just going to drive a lot better and smoother in traffic and park throttle situations. So looking forward to that different as well. I'm going to get this last bolt out of here, and then I'm sure we'll have a stuck gasket, because it's not just a O-ring throttle body like normal LS stuff, because why would I have anything normal? Whenever I put this supercharger on, I actually had to get that adapter plate there because it had the small truck 3-bolt pattern flange on the end of it, and I almost cut it off and just welded on directly, but I'm like, what's the point in that? No sense in getting carried away. Well, it came off nice. So yeah, there she is, out with the old and fixing to go in with the new. You've been good to us. We got 50-some thousand miles on you, but it's time to make this truck better if we can. Dang it, that's what we're going to do. So a lot of times it's the little things that impress me. I took the old idle air control and throttle position sensor off, and the only thing that I had at the time were these little Allen head steel screws. Well, the heads got a little rusty on them, and I was thinking, man, really need to go to the hardware store and get some stainless ones to replace those little rusty heads on there. That kind of drives me crazy now that I see it. But guess what Motion does? They give you stainless steel hardware for it. So you got stainless steel screws to hold on the TPS, IAC, the flange to the throttle body, the air filter tubes can mount on, and screws to hold it to the adapter / intake manifold itself. So once again, Motion going out of the way, giving you everything that you need to do the job right the first time. Alright, so this blade is just barely hitting. I'm going to try to fumble around here so that you guys can see it. Get some sunlight going here. It opens a pretty good ways, and it just catches on that adapter right there in the middle. But it's a pretty, it's a real steep angle on that adapter. And remember, we have to run this because of the snout that's on the supercharger. So I do have that other adapter on the way from ICT, but since this technically isn't any good and not usable the way it is, I think I'm just going to grind that out and see how it looks and feels. And if I can get enough clearance, I might just go ahead and run it. I don't know. It's going to take me a few days, working on all this stuff, so that other one comes in and it looks better. I might run it, but this one's no good to me, so I might as well try it and see if we can make it happen. But back in the day, when I put this on, I actually thought about cutting this flange completely off and putting a 90mm flange directly on this snout, so that there was no reduction there. And I don't know. I still may do that someday, because that would definitely give it a lot more airflow. I don't know how much power that would equate to, but we're definitely choking it down quite a bit with that. But it runs and drives fine. It's not, I don't know why I get tripped up on that kind of stuff, because I'm not going for maximum power. I never have. This is just a daily driver, so it doesn't really matter. But hey, if there's free horsepower there, you might as well take advantage of it. So who knows, maybe someday. But for now, we'll grind this thing out and see where we're at. Okay, so ground that down in the center there, open it up just a little bit. I mean, it only needed a hair. It was just catching on the edge, and then smoothed it out with a little grit wheel that I had to, make it nice and smooth and get rid of any ridges that was on there. So the other thing I was just looking is this tube. Remember I said we need to pull it off because it's going to be right in the way of the throttle cable? Well, as luck would have it, it doesn't go into the supercharger snout. It goes into this port right here, which would have been for like a factory IAC port, so we can get rid of that altogether. This gasket seals off the plate, the throttle body adapter, when it goes on here, so we don't even need to plug that. I'll probably just put a little silicone on there to just keep dirt out of it, and dirt daub or whatever, but no need to tap it and deal with all the shavings, because it doesn't go anywhere. It's completely blocked off, so we can just pull that out. So hey, that got a little easier. Well, thought I was going to get lucky with just knocking the edge off that adapter, but didn't work out. Typical, junior style. What can go wrong will go wrong. Not a big deal. When I bolted the throttle body back up there, it was wanting to hit the ledge. There was a tiny little lip on the supercharger, so unbolted it, did the old stuff a rag in there, took a die grinder to it, and then that grit roll, and just really radiused everything out, made it nice and smooth. So that's definitely going to help it quite a bit. We should have the clearance we need. We'll find out in just a second when we put it back on. And while that was off, well, that was the perfect time to go ahead and run an 1/8 inch tap down in there. Didn't have to drill it. It was already a little bit big for the tap, so it's not grabbing a ton on the threads, but there's no vacuum or pressure there or fluid, so it doesn't matter. It's just simply plugging the hole to keep trash out. So, you know, little thing there, tidied it up. And let's see if we got some clearance on that throttle blade now. Okay, so we've finally got some clearance involved there. Plenty of room for that throttle body to open up. Nice and smooth. It doesn't hit on anything. So nice to actually accomplish something and be able to move forward. So now we can get our TV cable hooked back up down here, and then we can get rid of that factory throttle cable and start routing our new motion throttle cable from the pedal and the firewall up to the throttle body. Well, since we hit a bump in the road with the throttle cable, I need to get a longer one. I decided to go ahead and start getting this radiator ready to come out. So one thing I did a long time ago, it's hard to see down there, but on the bottom of the radiator there's a number 6 hose with a 90-degree elbow right down there, that one. So instead of having the normal drain plug there, when you pull it and fluid coolant, you know, goes in, hits the frame rail and spills out everywhere, I just put a little hose on it to bring it down to a bucket to make life a lot more convenient and less messy in the event that I ever needed to drain it. And here we are, I needed to drain it. So not making a mess at all. A little tip for you guys, if you ever want to do it, it works great. There's a lot of room when you get that radiator and fans out of there. Plenty of real estate to do whatever we need. So that brings us to our radiator here. There's the old one. You can see all that discolored residue on the side there, maybe, you know, where it had been seeping coolant for a while, and got it out. So there's our new one right next to it. Brand new cold case. I do like the factory style, you know, stamp tanks that they have, but the smooth looks cool too. You can't go wrong either way, but it's a radiator. We're not judging on the little details like that. But now it's fabrication time, because we have AN necks on this one, number 20 AN upper and lower, and this one has just slip-on barbs, so we have to cut those off and get our barbs welded on, get our temp sending unit for the fan, the switch, over there on that side. So a little bit of things to switch around, and our steam hose for the typical LS deal, and we'll get our drain hose moved over here. So got a little fab work to do, but we'll get that knocked out and figure out how to get these fans mounted on there, because this radiator is a little bit bigger. So we'll have to do a little bit of, you know, make it happen situation, but I think it's going to be a lot nicer piece. All right, so back at it. Got the brackets welded on the radiator, got our AN bungs welded on there as well, and one bung in the side of the tank for the temperature sending unit for the fan. So we can carry on with getting our fans on here and get our drain hose in there so that this thing's ready to go back in the truck. I'm still waiting on the clamps that hold down the radiator on top. I actually found some today. Might be a day or two before I get those, but got those on the way so we can go back with a factory style mount. Remember, I cut this little ledge here, angle piece, so it has a ledge to sit on, and then I can screw it through here, and then on the top I can screw it straight down through there. There's no radiator underneath. That's a dead space in there. So we can utilize that area to take a couple screws to hold the top of the fans, and that should work out good. So a little bit of tinkering, and then we can actually set it in the truck and see how the thing's going to look. So far so good. Radiator looks really nice in there. Looks like all our hoses are going to be close to the same location as they were before. They're not exact. There's going to be a little more curve in like the upper hose, and probably a little bit in the lower as well. So until we get those mounts that reach from here over the top of the radiator, not really a whole lot we can do. Just wanted to set it in there and make sure everything's tight and right. Got to figure out a way to mount this fan controller again. I had it on the top. Delta PAG initially had it on this front face here, but you couldn't see it if you needed to adjust anything. But I'm not really worried about that now, because nothing needs to be adjusted. Everything's working and fine. So I have to play around with that a little bit. Once I know that everything's dialed in as far as fitment issues, and it's not going to come back out, and pour some coolant in it, know that there's no leaks from any of the welds that I put on there, then I'll go ahead and connect the fans up down here, solder those together so we know we got a solid connection, and that'll be some really good progress. But we're at a standstill until we get those top mounts. So I found these two factory upper radiator mounts, supports, whatever you want to call them. They hold that rubber bushing that goes underneath there, polyurethane in our case, but typical, you know, my fashion, this isn't a stock radiator. The location left to right works good as far as lining up with the bolt holes, but as far as out here, it doesn't cover the radiator. This isn't long enough, because a factory radiator would have been thinner. So, you know, classic situation when you have something modified, nothing fits, you have to modify everything. So we're going to have to probably cut a section out of here and put a piece of flap bar in there and lengthen it out that way so that it covers up the entire radiator better and holds the entire urethane piece over the top. So this actually does, you know, fit over the whole radiator. They do make shorter ones, but that would fit in the bracket, but then it doesn't fit the radiator. So we'll just have to work with what we've got and make it happen. There might be some grinding on this in the future around off this corner, because I don't think we're going to need all that bulk material on the top side. But hey, you know, this is just the way it goes. We'll have to keep cutting, grinding, welding, and make it happen. So that factory clamp is too short. Had to re-drill that hole to locate this rubber here, and I need something that goes all the way out here to hold the rest of this rubber slash polyurethane isolator in place. So came up with this little deal. It's kind of rough right now, but it's all bent in place, and I can go ahead and weld it, and that's going to encapsulate that on the end. It's built a, you know, bent a channel in it there so that it can't slip and slide either way, so it'll be locked in, and there's a little bit of a gap, but when you pull it back, it holds that radiator really nicely in place. So I need to get the two welded together, and then I can weld up these corners here and grind it back down smooth, make it really look like something, get some paint on it, and then we'll have this one bracket complete. So there's our bracket all welded up. Definitely works pretty good, just need to clean it up some, and then we can get a coat of paint on it so that it looks good and not like it's been all hacked up. So that'll look nice. In the meantime, while I'm waiting on the clamp to come in for the other side, I might as well go ahead and address this throttle body cable and transmission cable situation. So going to start working on that. Got the old cable out of the way and got our new one, and just need to find some washers because the hole in the firewall is a lot bigger than the ends that's on the cable, so we can take up that little gap and seal the firewall there. So I'm digging through my dad's stash and found some nice stainless steel big OD, you know, fender washers. So that's going to go in the firewall, and then another washer and the nut comes in on the back side, and then we'll be able to figure out the length that we need. We might have to take it all off again to trim the length, but figure out how we want to route this cable. All right, throttle cable is hooked up and adjusted. Feels really nice inside the truck. Had my wife pushing it so we can make sure to get it dialed in. Went ahead and locked down all those adjuster nuts on it, and then it was time to adjust the TV cable. So the stop used to be right out here in this range, and we ended up moving it right back here. So not a whole lot, and then we can fine tune it with this adjuster back here if we need to, but we got it really close. It's snug when it's in the wide open throttle position, so should be for some really nice shifts there. Everything's going really good. We need to trim off this excess cable here, and then I'll put a little piece of heat shrink on the end so it never jabs you if you're reaching in here to, you know, work on or check on something else. But man, is that thing sweet. It looks really good. Can't wait to drive it. But a few more little details on this radiator and get these hoses dialed in, and we'll be able to eventually drive this truck. A little bit of poor man's powder coat. You put this stuff on in the sun, got to be as good as powder coat, right? Let it get baked in there for a little speed dry, and we'll be ready to bolt these back on the truck once we flip them over and paint the other side. The radiator mounts are done. Got those all bolted in place. They turned out really good. Alright, so we're getting very close. You can see the funnel in the radiator. I've already poured a bunch of the coolant back in it that I drained out in the bucket. It's held almost all of it, and it was starting to, you know, burp a little bit as it's letting air out of the hoses and levels rising. So just been slowly topping that off, but I forgot another thing that we have to do that we talked about earlier. On the throttle body, we have the number 6 AN hose on the top here. So I grabbed a fitting and went with 150 degree, because I like putting all that extra bend on stuff when it needs it. It's you know, just going that little extra step, because like a 90 would be a standard fitting and it would have it kind of pointing up in the sky. Well, now it tucks it down, you know, behind the throttle body area, so now I can run that hose either underneath the snout to the other side, or I'm going to go around the back, follow this coolant line for the supercharger around between the firewall and the supercharger, because we have to come all the way over here to the air oil separator, because remember, we're no longer going to have it hooked on full manifold vacuum on the back side of the butterfly of the throttle blade. It's going to be on the front side like an LS would be from the factory. So it should be a much more ideal setup as far as the PCV system goes. Just got to run that hose around there. We'll keep topping off this coolant. And another minor detail, the coupler that I had on the intake tube before to the throttle body was 4" to 3.5", and it was a tight stretch over that throttle body that was on here. Well, now this one's a true 4", so I had to order an adapter, so we have a straight coupler, 4" to 4". So we'll fire it up and get it running. I plugged it in just so the air temp sensor knows what's going on. It'll be, you know, relative to what's going in the intake there. Won't be ideal, but we can at least get it fired up tonight and make sure there's no issues, let it get some temperature in it, make sure everything's cool. So, radiator's topped off, PCV hose installed, ran that around the backside like we were talking, comes underneath the brake booster and master cylinder there, plugs right in, nice and tidy out of the way. Fans are wired up down here. Important little thing, Allen wrench is on standby so that we can adjust the throttle blade if we need to, because I don't know where that's going to be. Once we get it warmed up, then we can see where our idle air control percentages and adjust that accordingly, but we have to do that when it's hot. So I'd say it's time to see if this thing remembers how to run, because gosh dang, it's been too long. Let's see. Oh, caught itself. So we're gonna have to do a adjustment on the throttle butterfly, you know, the position there versus our TPS when it gets hot. So we're sitting about 61, 57 on the top left on the TPS there. So that's not terrible, but for a cold start, listen to that. The idle air control is not screaming like it was on the last throttle body. So far, this has been a huge, huge success. Now, when we get that coupler on here and the other filter, it's going to be a little bit quieter, and it's noisy now because nothing's set, but it's nothing like what it was. You can hear it, but if the hood was closed, this would be a perfectly normal vehicle. So I'm going to let this thing warm up, and we can adjust that throttle blade open some more to get us a nice idle speed. So we may have to do a TPS auto set as well if we have to open that throttle blade far enough to get the idle air control down far enough. You want to be around 5% or less at a hot idle. So if we get it down that low and we're showing too much on the throttle position sensor from the blade being open, then we have to do a TPS auto set, and if so, I'll show you how to do that. But for now, we're just going to let this thing warm up. We'll double check our coolants as it's coming up to temperature, but so far so good. Man, it feels good to hear this truck running again. It really put some wind in my sails. Okay, so we are sitting at 195 degrees, so we're on the thermostat right now, and our idle air control, sorry it doesn't light up this screen the best, but idle air control position, we're sitting at 20%. So not too terribly high, but we definitely want to bring that down some. I'm going to try to use my fat finger here to get us back to all the sensors. So there we are, 195 like I said. We do, sorry, get this light out of the way. Okay, so we need to get our idle air control down, but our TPS is still sitting at 0, so we do have some room to open up that throttle blade before we start to move the TPS. Let me get here to an idle screen so we should be able to look at both of them. Yeah, there we go. Throttle position 0, idle air control 19. So let's come out here underneath the hood, and we're going to put that Allen wrench in there. And let's go a half a turn just for reference, so we have a standard. So we're pointing over that way, bring it around here, and then we're going to let it smooth out where it's at, because it's still going to try and maintain its own idle. We just got to get it happy between IAC and TPS. So now we're still 0 on our TPS and we're 2% on IAC. So that is pretty dang sweet. The only thing is, I need to hop in here, and I'm going to push the throttle just a little bit, and let's see if our throttle position sensor is moving as soon as I crack the pedal, just to make sure so we don't have a dead spot. And it is. So I really like that. That's a nice and low idle air control position there, and it's going to move around some, but it's going to be in that less than 5% range, so that's perfectly fine with me. And then as you turn the AC on the truck, or alternator kicks in, starts charging, anything like that, and you put it in gear and it's up against a torque converter, then it's going to pull out the idle air control and give it some more air so it can achieve that higher idle that the engine's wanting. So far so good. Alright, so I'm going to kick the AC on, That bumps it up to 20 on the initial engagement of that compressor, brings it back down to 17, 18. AC is blowing nice and cold. So I like that on the idle air control. Still 0 on throttle position sensor. Put my foot on the brake, put it in reverse because that's the closest gear, and now we're in 35 to 40-ish. So that's all tolerable on the idle air control. And then, you know, as we put it back in park and we shut the AC off, that idle air control will slowly come back down to that, you know, creep down to 10, and then it'll really creep down to like that 5% zone. So right where we want to be. Amazing part is how it catches itself so much better. The old throttle body wouldn't have been able to do that, and I didn't change the idle air control speed setting, so still the same thing there. But the old one, you could rev it up and you go to bring it down like that real quick, and sometimes it would try to stall out, or it would barely catch itself. So I don't know how much different you can make an idle air control circuit, but clearly Motion Raceworks has got that thing figured out, and it's working great. Dang, that is so smooth and quiet compared to what I used to have. And like I said earlier, it also catches itself much better. I think that might have something to do with the way we rerouted that PCV, so that it doesn't get full vacuum you know, at idle as soon as you fire it up, and it's going to be on the front side of that throttle blade. Really makes a big difference. I believe that in the throttle body, who knows, but it just cranks up and runs so much better already. So I'm in love. Time to head for the house. Test drive successful. Everything's still working, still running cool. Throttle body's super quiet. I love it. Oh my gosh, what a difference. I'd have never thought that one manufacturer to another would make that much difference on the throttle body, but it does. Motion Raceworks killed it on that throttle body. Throttle cable, silky smooth. Love it. So huge shout out to those guys for making such quality products in the USA. Thanks for watching Junk Buff Jr. Hope y'all enjoyed it. We'll see y'all next time.